Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Jessi Hartnett. Jessi, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, happy to be here. Thank you.
I think I'm another one on the map bingo board. One of the things I think I should do with this podcast, but I haven't gotten there yet, is part of the imagery should be like a map of the U.S. and the world with like tax for each place that I've had a guest from. Very few from New York City, so whatever, it's fine. We're going to let it slide because in order to have a podcast, you have to accept people from the middle of nowhere like you. You knew it was coming. Sorry. As you know, as a fellow podcaster, you know that finding guests is an interesting part of podcasting, and being a part of groups where people are guests or people are looking for guests or people reach out to you is sometimes interesting. And then every once in a while, you get a guest request or a suggestion or a recommendation that's like, I didn't even know that I could discuss this. I didn't even know that this was a thing. I didn't know. And I'm teasing a little bit what we're going to discuss on the podcast, but I just want the listeners to know, read the bio, get the book. But it's so interesting to me that you found such a unique way of sharing your passion, your expertise, and helping people in their life journeys. So before we begin, I just want to say thank you for doing that.
I love it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay.
Thank you.
So here you go, guests. Here you go, listeners. Sorry. Jessi is the author of Honor Your Heart. I don't think I've ever mentioned a book before or this early on, but we're just going to say that. A Soulful Guide to Quitting Smoking. And the host of the You Can Quit Smoking's podcast. As you can probably guess, Jessi has dedicated her life to the personal transformation in quitting smoking, not just from a medical lens or practical lens, but also the emotional side of smoking, quitting, and addictions. As I said, listeners, this was awesome when I got it. So I hope that this is a good conversation. So again, Jessi, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And it's not something I had planned on getting into. I personally never thought I would be able to quit smoking. So I definitely didn't think I would be here on the other side helping others cross too. So it's been quite a journey.
So I think in order to talk about the end or in order to talk about the goal or the current hustle, we have to go a little bit back to the beginning. And whether it's you personally or in travels or view of things or people you've spoken to or writing the book or gaining that expertise, what is the underlying thing with starting smoking, addictions, and things like that? Because I'll set the stage by saying the challenge with smoking is that there's chemicals in there literally that suck a person in. It's different than other addictions because nicotine is literally an addictive substance, as opposed to, let's say, gambling or alcohol, where a person can say, I was emotionally drawn into it. I felt the high of gambling of the win, and that's what brought me in. I thought I was never going to lose. I felt the escape of being drunk, and therefore that's why I do it. Smoking is a little bit different, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert, because there's this like chemical additive to it, but yet I assume that a lot of people start or get involved in similar ways or maybe not. So I'd like to start with that.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to compare addictions too much, and there is a chemical component to many of them. I think that alcohol can be very addictive physically. I mean, you can die when you try to get off it when your body's used to functioning on that. So, I like to focus on the more emotional, spiritual side of smoking, but I found that most people come into smoking for two reasons, which can kind of be one reason, honestly, is they're young. They're looking for a sense of belonging, and smoking takes the place of an initiation where they want to enter adulthood. They want to understand who they are. They want to go through some kind of trial, some kind of painful experience. It's just part of the initiation process where you kind of have to shed that ego and get back to the body, the physical sensation, and figure out who you are. That's been done traditionally in societies for all the time, but we don't really have that in the modern society. So we do it in really weird, maladapted ways, like picking up smoking. And so that was myself. I also found out a lot of people gravitate towards smoking in times of grief, either losing someone close to them, losing a relationship, some kind of life change, a divorce, getting fired, things like that, where they're seeking that kind of comfort and some type of way to process that. And so people go towards smoking. It's kind of like this dance with death in both cases, where it's like we're interested in losing an old part of ourselves, having some kind of like new identity, something to grasp onto, and playing with something that's risky, something that's everyone knows now, it's not any secret that smoking is bad for you. So it's very interesting that people still do it knowing that. And I think it's because it's that kind of dance with death. We want to see what's really there and take that risk and go and see it for ourselves.
So I was going to ask you about that. Can we set the stage for this conversation? Because
Sure.
I know that we're going to discuss the emotions, but can we set the stage with the assumption that the average person who picks up smoking knows that there are dangers? We can agree on that. It's not like,
Yes.
to draw an extreme example, a 6-month-old kid who gets a hold of a firearm and shoots someone, right? Just because they have no idea what's going on. Like, there's enough there in America and in the world that we could agree that the average person may not acknowledge how dangerous it is or may block it at that moment of starting. But if you really like sat with them right before they lit that first cigarette, they would, most people or everyone will say they understand that there's some sort of danger there.
Yeah. And it's hard to keep the emotion side out of it because I feel like the emotional side is more powerful than that knowledge.
I'm agreeing with you. So
Yeah.
Then what we're saying is, that's what I wanted to get to, is the next step is, what have you learned about the human nature or human people that say, I'm going to block that out. I'm going to blur over that, which I know is in my logic is the truth, because of the emotion or in favor of the emotion or because of the emotional response. That's what I think is important. I think it's meaning the premise 60 years ago could have been, it's what everyone was doing. Nobody knew the health risk and everyone just picked it up and boom, 40 years later, it was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could have said then that there was less of an emotional tilt to it because it was like so rampant. Everybody was doing it everywhere, in movie theaters and restaurants, everywhere, in their own homes, in their cars, everything. Now it's like, I feel like there's something that you're onto something, because there's so much of that emotion, because you have so much that you have to negate. I know so many people who know they smoke for whatever reason, and you're probably going to inform us of some of them, but I don't smoke in my car. I don't smoke in my house. I don't smoke in front of my spouse. I don't smoke in front of my kids because it's dangerous and blah, 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 blah. So check. Yet I'm still going to find the way to do it. Take us to that impact or that logic or lack thereof.
Yeah, I don't know that it starts out necessarily this way. It kind of seems like, like I said, if you're young, it's definitely to belong. For most of us, we see somebody do it, maybe an adult in our life, our friends, and that need to belong, that need to have an identity is so strong that it counteracts anything. And of course, young people, nothing bad's ever going to happen to them. They're invincible. They're not forward thinking. So it's really more about like, what can I get right now out of this? And I think that people that are in the throes of a crisis are just looking for any way to get out. They're just trying to survive. So if it's like, if this thing helps me, I'm already falling apart. My world is crashing down. I, might be wrestling with some really dark thoughts, really hard feelings. The smoking doesn't seem that bad in comparison. It's more used as a tool to get by. And that's where things get really maladapted, where when you're in it, when you're in the addiction, once you've developed the habit and you have all these associations with it, you feel like you need it to live. Seriously, if you go into fight or flight, if you don't have your smoke, I'm sure you've seen people in this state where it's like they can't function, they can't think, they can't, handle the emotional wave, the physical sensations, whatever's going on for them without smoking. So it feels like a way to live where it becomes really backwards.
I'll tell you something super interesting about that. I don't want to dwell on this, but you just reminded me. It's interesting to me because I always look at people on flights. I view that as like a very interesting way of looking at smoking and smokers. And that is, if a person agrees to take a 10-hour flight or a 6-hour flight to Europe, they're good, right? They may smoke before, they may smoke after. The second the flight starts getting delayed or things get delayed, right? They're like, oh my God, I need a cigarette. But by the way, they might have taken a 7-hour flight. you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but there's that moment of like, this is my calm, or this is my what brings me back to equilibrium. And as long as I can plan it, so it's interesting, right? Because none of those people would say I should just take out a cigarette on the plane, right? You're buying a ticket. You know that there's going to be this amount of time. So it's just, that's interesting to me. But you say that you found that people find it through a sense of belonging. What is it about I'm going to call it counterculture belonging, right? As we said, no longer is it prevalent. I don't want to use the word average or normal because that's not fair, but you know what I mean. It's not. So how does a person get to that like counterculture belonging?
Well, I do just want to say on the forefront that all of this applies to vaping habit too. So vaping is wildly popular with the youth right now. It's the same idea. It's just a different form.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just about, finding that sense, like, especially as a young person, you start to realize, like, maybe I don't agree with authority on everything. Maybe I want to be different than what my family is, what my school is telling me to be. You're kind of looking for a little bit of that rebellion. Everybody knows that. Everybody is in their own form. And so I think that smoking can really fulfill that for us, where it's like, I want to go see for myself. I want to do something that's a little edgy. It's becoming less prevalent, like you were talking about when everyone was smoking in the films. That definitely influenced me when I started smoking. It was just like, oh, it's so cool. It's very adult-like. That's especially when you're around adults, growing up, it's a need for adult to belong to that, to leave childhood behind and do adult things. So I think it's very attractive to young people to pick up and try and see for themselves. And it's just like kind of a mistrust in authority, I think, really. I don't want to speak for everyone, but that's what I felt for myself, definitely.
So then you transition from understanding, and you've developed this understanding, your own life, your own journey, starting smoking at a young age, to, I got to quit. And it's interesting because I agree with you. Most people focus on health. Hey, I had a kid and blah, 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 blah. I could tell you in my own life, my father, he's rest to be, smoked for 40 years or so. And it was a massive asthma attack by me while in his arms as a young baby that basically made him quit. So there's that. And I know that this is a lot of what your work is based on. So I really am interested in this. It's, if we understand that maybe that might be true, but the start was emotional and replacing, you can't just replace that with a logical end. Meaning, if we're agreeing with the premise that we mentioned a few minutes ago, which is everybody blocks out the logic in favor of the emotion as it relates to this, then how do you get to a place, or how do you help people get to a place where they put back on the logic, health, going, but it has to be via emotion. It has to be on the road of emotion, because that's how they got there. You have to kind of backtrack the steps, if that makes sense. So take us there.
I love that story you just shared, because although it's seemingly on the surface, it's like, oh, it's about asthma, it's about health. That had to be so emotional for your father. That's what overrides.
He used to, I remember vividly, it's so crazy, and I'm sorry that there's a sidebar, but like right after he quit, I'm so dating myself in New York, like listeners, like there used to be a thing called a smoking section in a restaurant. Now there's don't even exist anymore. And he used to sit in the smoking section just to get like the smell. He used to walk behind people in the street who were smoking. It was unbelievable. It was really unbelievable. So, and I will say, ultimately, it was one of the illnesses that took his life in 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago now. So obviously that was somewhat painful, but I want to get you back to the question. How do you shape that, or help people reshape those lenses?
So there's a few ways to do it. What if it can be motivation? Like, what are you quitting for? And if that is very strong, that can move you towards that goal. So a child is a great example. It could be something that you're moving towards or something you're moving away from. Like, I'm tired, like kind of like a rock bottom situation, which is kind of both in your case, like in the story you just told, where it's like something that's so bad that you just can't do that anymore, or something that's you want so badly that you move towards. So that's a really easy way to tap into emotion.
I'll tell you something interesting about that. I live in New York City, and there's a bit, but it's true. It's true. I've seen it with my own eyes, of the people who are unfortunately suffering from cancer, even lung cancer, who are standing outside of Sloan Kettering Hospital with their chemo poles smoking.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it doesn't even get to that. Sometimes even in the most extreme moment of like, it's smacking you right in the face. Still, people can't get over that hump.
So that's where we could go to the second idea that I like to play on, is with the idea of needs. Because if you have no other way to meet your needs other than smoking, you cannot give it up, because like I said, you feel like you need it to survive. So even when you're in the throes of cancer, you're very ill, everything's falling apart from you, you're still alive because you need that thing, or so you think. And so another direction to go is to look at the needs. What am I getting out of smoking? And this is the hard part. You have to figure out new ways to meet that need. And it takes imagination, it takes creativity, it takes persistence, and very openness to try new things, try different things. And we lose a lot of that when we become addicted to something, because we use the addiction to solve every problem we have, whether it's appropriate or not. And so it really takes a lot of commitment and practice, hustle, to continually try new things, and to not just try them once, but stick with them, develop that consistency. And a lot of that is guided by the intuition. It's not something that I can prescribe to somebody, because what is going to work for you might not work for another person. It's the thing that makes you excited about life. It's the thing that helps you connect with yourself, so that you don't need something outside of you to turn to go running to every time that you get stressed out, every time that like I said, you use smoking for everything. Every time that you're thirsty, you're hungry, like these basic needs, we become so reliant on smoking for. So it takes tuning back into the body, which is a lot easier than it sounds, because most of us just smoke mindlessly. We don't understand why we're doing it. We just need to do it. And so it takes really slowing down and reconnecting with the self to go that direction.
I'll tell you what I find amazing about that. And this is also fits in general with just our theme of keep hustling, or reinventing or rewriting the script of the hustle culture. And that is that there are two conflicting, or not conflicting, but they're just two, I find, different like polar reasons why people do things and why people hustle. One is for themselves and one is for others. It's very rare that people have both. That doesn't mean, by the way, that the person who hustles for themselves is completely selfish. That's not what I'm saying, right? I could hustle for myself because I want to grow personally, and I know that if my business and my life, and I grow myself, my wife and children and family and those around me are going to benefit. That doesn't mean I'm completely selfish, but it's like people, that's one way of looking at it, similar to what you're saying about quitting smoking. And then the second way is, it has nothing to do with me. Like, I've tried for myself, and for some reason people feel for themselves that they're not worthy, they're not good enough, they can never achieve it, they'll never do it. And the only thing that gets them to that next level, or to keep going, or to keep hustling, is the other person, is the fact that I have to do this for someone else. And then, interestingly enough, they end up growing themselves and benefiting themselves. So I feel like a person, one of the first things a person needs to do is figure out like what motivates them. And that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means, do I have enough of myself? And a lot of what you're talking about, especially in the addiction spaces, people have suppressed a lot of that negative feeling in themselves. And we see this all the time on the podcast, in the lifestyle, in the movement that we're building and keep hustling, is that the unlock that people can get to when they realize how much is inside. As Jet Bartlett said in The West Wing, sometimes when and I think I'm going to botch this quote, but it was in one of the greatest speeches ever. Sidebar, he was speaking after there was a bombing in a college at a swim meet. I don't know if you're a West Wing person. I'm a West Wing junkie. And one of the great lines that they write in his speech, I believe Sam Seaborn is the one who wrote it. He said, sometimes we feel that we've reached the height of human capacity, and then we realize that that human capacity is really limitless. And that doesn't mean only for one person. I believe that means that everybody's human capacity is limitless. Yes, there are certain people that are physically more gifted, so they'll make it to the NBA and I won't. But that doesn't mean that I'm limited and they're not. That just means my capacity is elsewhere. And I feel like emotionally, people need to get to that for themselves or for others to pass over this very difficult thing to get through.
Yeah. And I do tend to encourage people to focus on themselves, because so much of smoking habit is a self-worth issue. And I don't know about every person, but I know for myself that I was a very giving person. I was always working for others, and smoking was the only thing I had for myself. And like I said, things get warped. And so I really felt like that was my me time. That was my self care. That was something special just for me to kind of balance out all that working hard for everyone else and doing what everyone else wanted me to do. And so, like I said, to meet that need, I had to let go of some of that and prioritize myself, truly prioritize myself, and focus on my self care, because it isn't selfish to nurture yourself, put back into yourself so that you can show up for other people in a way that's more meaningful and more sincere. But ultimately, it's you got to fill your own cup, or you're going to be burnt out and do crazy things to try to get by. So that's what's fun for myself anyway.
How do you get people to start thinking that way? Like there's a certain like closedness, edginess that I bet the conversations start with, which is really defensiveness, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But like, oh, I have to quit. I want to quit because my wife says I have to, or I want to for myself. And then probably 3 minutes in the conversation, it goes to some sort of, again, taking off someone who comes to you with the emotion, right? That's one way and probably the easier person for you to help. But how do you crack the first level of the armor when the person doesn't seem to be receptive, but you know exactly how it has to go?
So I like to use stories because I feel like that brings out the more emotional side and can say a lot more than facts or points or anything like that. So I share myself vulnerably, and I find that that helps build trust and helps people look within themselves. They can see things in my own story that might help them. I really like to use ancient myths. I think they're amazing that they had a lot of stuff figured out back then. They really understood the psyche. Not much has changed. So if we can tap into those deeper sides of ourselves, then things start to move, because so much of our life is just superficial. We're just trying to like get by on looks, on success, on these things. But if we can slow down and take a deeper look, that can open up whole new sides of people. And I just start every conversation with curiosity. So if they're really defensive, I'll just gently ask why. When did you decide that? And kind of just bring up that a lot of the way we live is based on our beliefs, and we can change, because I think that's the biggest thing that can hang people up. Like, I thought I was a smoker, like that was who I was, my essence. And so it's really about like figuring out what is possible just through like understanding a person better. Like, so you do this because of this, like what else could you do, or is that true? Just start to kind of bring in that voice that we don't have in our own head, because we just accept everything that we've done as the only way we can do it because it works. That's the survival tool. That's how the mind works. It goes back to old patterns because they've worked. They've kept us alive, like smoking. And it's like, well, this isn't going to work out long term, but this has worked so far. So I think that just having that conversation naturally leads to it. And it's okay to have some resistance. That's absolutely expected. There's going to be resistance to change a habit that you've been relying on for so long. And you just kind of slowly work your way into the pool. You start out, tiptoeing in, and you go deeper and deeper and deeper as people feel comfortable. I don't like to, grill people, interrogate people. I come in with curiosity. And a lot of the times people will answer their own questions. They will have their own insights. And that's what I really like to do, is to empower the person to answer themselves through that conversation. It's not so much me directing or pointing out what I see, because of course I see things, but it's more about getting them to see what they need to move past the problem they're having. And it's so unique and individual.
You say that you use your personal journey as a source of strength to help others navigate a path to peace. Do you believe that everyone can achieve peace?
Yes. I mean, there are amazing stories out there that are hard for me to wrap my mind around. People that have been in prison, been abused, been in horrible situations, and somehow they find peace. So it's not the external world that we think it is, all the things that happen to us. It's the way that we show up and the way that we view ourselves, and just something within us that keeps us calm and steady no matter what's happening around. And I believe that comes from the heart.
So what stands in most people's way?
Like I said, the self-worth is a big one. I just think with our society, it can be a lot of intense messaging for convenience, for competition, all these ideals that can really tear us apart. And that was definitely a part of my own smoking habit. I thought that I had to be part of that and live that way, and then I realized I didn't. So, like I said, it's the openness to change and find your own path, really being authentic, really being genuine, following your own intuition. I think it's disconnecting from ourselves, disconnecting from that intuition that can lead us the farthest astray. Because when I was smoking, my body was screaming at me all the time. My heart was telling me, this isn't right. You can do better than this. This isn't working anymore. But like I said, my mind was so used to that pattern that it's like, no, I need this. And I need to do all these things that stress me out. I need to be at the top and competitive all the time to be loved, to be accepted. So it's the beliefs we have and it's the messages that we accept.
I love that. I always talk about environment and beliefs. There's a great analogy or saying or metaphor, I don't really know what it is, that I came across that I mentioned before on the podcast, which is that the same boiling water that makes a potato soft makes an egg hard. And so therefore you can't really say it's environment, you can't really say it's me. The person can really choose and has an opportunity, unlike potatoes and eggs, to create their own path and to open up and to get to their own inner peace. Jessi, this is awesome. I love what you're doing. I love your hustle. I think this is great. I love the fact that you've turned a negative to a positive, helping people, changing the world, hopefully in the way that to get everyone to that peace, and helping people who are struggling get to a significantly better place, not just physically, but also emotionally. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah. I mean, I love my work. And like I said, it's my intuition that led me here. This is something that I would have never, ever imagined for myself. I was dead set on this career path for 10 plus years, 15 years, I don't know, and I didn't see any other way. So it can really change things when you're willing to go through this transformation. So quitting smoking opened so many doors for me in ways that I never expected. And I'm so grateful that I took that journey, even though it was hell. It was very difficult. So
I love that. Thank you again. As you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote and what it means to them. So with that, I'm going to say thank you again, Jessi, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Let me see if I can get this right. So I like Rumi. He's a poet, and he has this line that says, "A wound is the place where the light enters." And I think that, like you said, turning things around, smoking was something I lived in a lot of shame with. And even after I quit, I never wanted to talk about it because it was a part of myself that I was very embarrassed about and I had a lot of regret. But now I've grown to be thankful for the experience because it allows me to have so much wisdom, to have so much empathy. And the thing that hurt me is the thing that let me shine and really come into my purpose and my meaning in life. So I love that quote.
I absolutely love that. Thank you again. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.